Hello, this is the Net Hero podcast. I'm Sumit Bose, and this podcast is all about business and doing better for the planet. It's not an eco podcast, we're not green warriors. We believe that business is good and business will make the difference, but it's about holding businesses to account. So, if you're interested in what we're doing to try and make things better, to stop our polluting of the planet, to stop our global warming, to stop us driving around in cars that are polluting the air that we breathe, this is the podcast for you. It's all about business, it's about invention, it's about entrepreneurs, scientists, and frankly, there's a few wild cards as well. Do hope you enjoy listening to this episode, and make sure you subscribe and follow us on your social media platforms. And please check out our two news websites, energylivenews.com and Future Net Zero. On with the show. Welcome to this episode of the Net Hero podcast, and it's all about that big ball in the sky, the beautiful, wonderful sun, which we saw a lot of this summer. And of course, if you look at it, could be one of the biggest things that we have in terms of our energy comes from the sun. How do we capture it? Well, solar power has been the thing that we've all turned to, but are we using it in the right way? Is solar really the answer that could help us decarbonize much more? Some people believe we need to go and build more wind farms, we need to do hydro, we need to do nuclear. But is solar being overlooked? And in one of the areas that it could really help, would that be in AI? You may have seen the news about how much the pull of AI will affect our energy demand over the next 5 years. The IEA has reported that AI will become a significant player. In fact, I think the latest stats, and they do change, is that AI will be pulling in the amount of energy that the USA does within the next 3 years. So globally, we've got to solve this issue. What can we do? And is solar a way to get around that? Well, today I'm joined by a man who works for a company that's doing something in this field. Rob Stake, who works for a company called Alliant Energy. Hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, really pleased to be talking about this today. Thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. Tell us a little bit about the company. It started in Sweden, is that right?
Yes, that's right. And we're basically two parts in the company. We have a utility scale grid connected business that manages about 0.5 gigawatt of solar parks, mainly across the Nordics.
Yeah.
And then we have the part that I'm responsible for, which is called behind the meter, which provides on-site or solar dedicated directly to a customer as opposed to connected to the grid. And both parts are growing at pace. We operate, as I say, across the Nordics, but also across Europe. And we've got a growing presence behind the meter now in the UK as well.
In terms of kind of the general picture, and I'll go into what you guys are doing, where do you see solar right now? I mean, it's one of those technologies that, I'm old enough to remember the 70s. It was big, it was coming, and then it sort of died away. And there was a bit of it here and there. And, maybe in some hot countries you'd see it. And over the last 20 years, it's just gone bang. Or has it? Because, as I said before we started recording, there's some sort of kickback now on people not liking solar farms next to them. Businesses worried about long-term contracts in PPAs of 25 years. So if you were to summarize the picture, let's talk Europe really rather than globally. How do you see solar?
Yeah, solar was slow to get going, but the cost of solar has dropped so dramatically now that the past few years have seen an enormous boom. I saw a statistic, we're up to 1.4 terawatts of capacity in the world, and which is a unusual. It's a massive number that we can't really comprehend. But what it means is that solar is actually the fastest growing source of electricity that we've had in the history of humankind. But it's also the cheapest, which means that it's now being adopted pretty much everywhere. And that's one of the things that I love about solar, is that it is decentralized. It doesn't rely on the same systems as traditional grids. We don't need huge grid pylons to reach small communities or remote communities. We can send a lorry load of solar and storage, and that can do the job faster and better than any historic energy source could have done. So I think it's an incredibly exciting space to be. It is taking off. It is controversial. The political climate is not necessarily fantastic for renewables at the moment, and whether Trump and Farage like it or not, though, solar continues to grow. And even in the UK, the UK is adopting more and more solar, and everyday citizens in the UK are using solar much more than ever. Millions of homes are being powered by solar at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, that is the funny thing. I mean, I remember when I was at the BBC doing a story about it, and one of the big myths, which I'm sure you will agree. In fact, I think it was, I might have been in the Nordics when I was told this. It's not about the amount of sunlight you get; it's about the daylight. Correct? So it's like how much light is hitting the panel. It doesn't matter if it's a cloudy day. Obviously, it works better. But the idea that you have to have blazing hot sun, otherwise solar's pointless. It's massive in Germany. It's massive in Sweden. It's growing here. Not that much sun in those countries.
Exactly. Yeah. My business Alight was actually born out of Sweden, which obviously particularly
It's bloody
through
dark half the time.
yeah, 6 months of the year it's really cold and it's really dark. So there is a lesson there for the developers and market participants. And actually we've spread across the Nordics. So we're making the business case work, and this is all commercial solar as well. So it's not subsidized. So we're making that work, and we're making the technology work in some of the darkest conditions in Europe. So yeah, that is a total myth. And of course, the panel technology continues to advance, and then you've got battery solutions as well, which just makes solar even more viable. Pretty much anywhere.
When you look at kind of the issues that have affected, I think there was initial, you've been based in the UK all this time, haven't you? I know you're working for the Swedish company, right? So you'll remember the feed-in tariffs and things like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And there was that boom, wasn't there, about sort of 2010, about 14, 15 years ago, trying to get the cost down, which has happened, getting towards parity and then eventually below, grid level costs. And there was a lot of kind of like, well, yeah, it's going to be subsidized, and that's what drove the boom. And then over the last few years, we've had, as I said, this bit of a backlash. The environmental cost of solar. What do you do with panels when they're gone? The fact that nearly all of it is from China at present, even though people are trying to get into it. The political wranglings that you've discussed. Do you think any of this has affected the confidence in the market? Or are people going, listen, it's not about solar. It's about, let's have our solar. So, let's try and get firms making solar panels in nations rather than at present, nearly all of it, most of it, 90-odd%, I think the last time I checked, is all made in China.
I mean, they are topical issues, aren't they? And there's no getting away from those kind of myths, and much of it is, is about myths and perpetuating myths, and the idea that solar parks are damaging to ecosystems is, that might have been true decades ago, but it's just not how the industry operates now, and it's certainly not how we operate. And supply chains are important. Supply chains are obviously reliant predominantly on China, but there are really good checks and balances in place to make sure that what goes into the ecosystem is good quality, is has got the right certificates. We visit the factories where the panels are produced, so there's really good measures that you can take and steps that you can take to look after that side of thing. But biodiversity in particular is a really hot topic for the solar parks, and that's something that I think the industry as a whole is tackling really well and is championing what's called nature positive principles in
Yeah,
solar
yeah, we've covered.
deployments.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
mean, look, I mean, we have to be fair. Everything is screwing up the planet, right? Whether you're taking oil out of the ground, whether you're building a wind turbine, whether you're building a solar panel, whether you're building concrete for a nuclear, there is a damage, and we all know that. I think, the stories that we've seen lately is about kind of how is the industry tackling end of life? How long does a solar panel last? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years if it's not looked after properly, and then you've got to get rid of all those kind of rare earths and things that are in there. Do you think, again, this is as the industry matures, these are all the things that you guys are looking at to get sure that the consumer doesn't go, okay, I like the solar, but in 8 years' time it's just rusting, and what is it going to landfill?
yeah, and again, these panels uh, are incredible. I mean, it's simple technology
Yeah.
actually. The panels and the way that they're built now, we fully expect them to last for decades,
Oh
and
wow. Right.
we're planning on owning and operating them for decades. 40 years is a number that's often bandied about, but
Wow.
end of life is important. Much of
Yeah.
the raw materials can be recycled and can
Yeah.
be recycled locally as well. And again, there are principles in place to make sure that that is done properly and done to standards.
Are you starting to look at that yourselves? Like when you install a park, you go, right, we know it's going to last this, and then at the end we'll help clean it up or replace it, whatever we're going to do to make sure our environmental footprint is as little as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is a key principle for us, but again, goes alongside all the other aspects like biodiversity and making sure that we deliver a net gain in habitat variety, like supply chains. We are a signatory to the UN Global Compact as
Yeah.
well, so there's principles in there that we uphold. And we're audited on those. So yeah, these and this is typical in the industry as well. And to your earlier point, um, I don't think it's holding back the
No,
growth
no,
of
I agree.
solar
I think
at
it's one of
all.
those things, who, let's be honest, 100 years ago, who really cared about the environment? Didn't care about whales, didn't care about anything. So, oil and gas had a bit of a free pass, and it has done. Obviously, I suppose in a way, slightly unfair, but it's also good. The renewable technology are being judged on their environmental credentials by going the lessons we've learned from oil and gas. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, turn the clock back 100 years, and
Yeah.
the damage that commissioning a new power station might do versus putting in place a solar park. It's completely incomparable. And as I say, these solar parks, the ones that we're putting in place, are actually delivering a net gain in habitat diversity and are benefiting the local environment around them.
Let's talk about AI. And, I am real and I hope you're real. So we're not generated, although it's getting very clever. It's here. I mean, wow, I use it, pretty much everyone, and even my little 6-year-old knows what it is. Um, I said at the beginning, the demand for AI is pretty much exponential, right? And it is going to grow, and it's going to grow globally. So let's talk about where you see solar fitting into this, because we've had talk about the power is so much that you might need a small modular reactor, nuclear power. People are talking about building huge battery farms and wind turbine, you know, combined farms to power these things. Can solar play a part? Because the other thing that does strike me is you need quite, unless you get super smart, you need a lot of area, don't you, for solar?
Yeah, solar is area dependent, obviously. Can it play a part? Of course it can, and it is playing a part because you need the energy mix um,
Yeah,
in order to provide resilience, but round the clock power as well. And you mentioned at the beginning, the IEA is
yeah,
projecting huge increases. I think consumption is expected to double by 2030 from AI
It
alone.
changes every time. I get press release every 3 months, and it's changed again.
But what we do know is that it's just going to balloon, isn't it? So
Yeah,
these companies will have to. Well, they are looking at alternative energy sources such as solar. There's no doubt about that. But I think what's actually interesting with the topic of AI is it's not just about data centers and AI. We've also got electrification still happening
yeah,
across multiple sectors, across transport, across manufacturing, and we've got a boom in air conditioning adoption,
of course, yeah, yeah.
things like electrified heat. So these sorts of aspects can actually end up dwarfing the needs of AI. And I think what's going to be interesting is how the application of AI within these realms could deliver modest savings in consumption. So if you put that all together, it could dwarf. You could end up with a net gain scenario. We know that in manufacturing, there are industries, particularly in materials manufacturing, things like glass, steel, copper, things like that, can be massively inefficient in energy consumption.
Yeah, yeah.
So the benefits that AI could deliver in those processes will be really interesting to watch. And I think that's just as important, watching the reduction in consumption across traditional sectors that's driven by the adoption of AI as it will be to monitor the needs of AI itself.
What about the? I think someone said to me, I can't remember who it was, but it was quite good on it. It's like basically uh, solar is a bit, bit like terrible analogy. It's probably like a cheese sandwich without the bread. Basically, you need batteries to make the rest of the sandwich, right? So, is solar dependent on the scale up of batteries? And if so, your industry could be held back, although things are improving, but it's not getting that kind of funding, battery tech, as well as perhaps other technologies out and this stuff. So is that another limiting factor in what we could do with solar? Because there's no point in having solar if you can't store the thing.
Yeah, it's a good point. I like the analogy as
It's
well.
terrible, but it's
No, it works. It does work. And yeah, batteries with solar is the ideal
yeah,
scenario because obviously solar is only going to generate power in daylight, and that's always been the case. So for anyone that requires power outside of daylight hours, you're going to need another power source, and that's been the story ever since we started to use solar powers. But it's like the stage is now set for storage, isn't it? Because
right.
we've
Yeah,
also had such enormous turbulence in energy markets and pretty wild price
yeah, absolutely.
fluctuations.
Yeah,
And then we've set against what we've just been talking about. You've got demand is going to start steadily increasing year on year. And then behind that, you've got fragile grids and fragile power supplies as well, whilst battery prices continue to fall. So it's almost, you've got these almost perfect conditions for storage solutions and for BESS to take off. I think the price of storage has dropped 50% in the past 2 years alone. So it's this incredibly volatile market where BESS is ideally suited, but you've still got the cheapest energy source there has ever been in solar. So solar is a necessary part of any consumption mix, I think, and building in that flexibility through BESS is a very sensible thing to do, in my view.
but for you, your solar parks that you own, I mean, do you have like deals with battery companies? Do you have your own? So, because I know you do feed into the grid, like you said in the Nordics, and they can just take it. But you know, if you're building one for me and behind me, I need a battery, don't I? Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, if you're building one behind the meter, I mean, we've grown without storage. So our
Yeah.
behind the meter clients typically will take about 20% of their load demand for electricity from solar, and that will work for
Right.
them. But what we're now doing is with the addition of BESS, we're able now to oversize
Yeah. Yeah.
these solar parks and these solar installations, and then store the excess so that it can be used around the clock. And so we're now talking to clients about serving 50%, 60% of their overall electricity demand with the two in combination. So it's a match made in heaven, really.
But it is increasing. Yeah, the demand is increasing for. Can we use the solar longer? For can I have it for when the sun's not shining and store it away?
Yes, exactly. And actually, in the UK, one of the good things that the grid has and the government has done recently is they've opened up the market trading possibilities for commercial clients now, which were closed before. So now you can actually save money on your imported electricity as well by using the batteries that we install for them. So yeah, it's becoming part of pretty much every conversation that we have now. Is how to get the most out of BESS as well.
Gotcha. I mean, look, I don't want to be completely because we've got listeners from all around the world, but just talking about the UK specifically for a second, when you go and see clients, I had a feeling a few years ago, particularly around COVID, there was this big kind of push for net zero. When net zero was written into law and people going, yeah, we're going to do it. Have you seen uh, behind the meter being as popular? Has it gone down? Because I get sort of anecdotal advice, evidence that it's not as popular as it was. What would you say the market's like now?
I would say it's taking off. So I think
Really?
if it's anecdotal, then I would say it depends who you're talking to. I think you probably go through waves of adoption, and
Yeah,
particularly across Europe, who are more subject to negative energy prices and capture rates are problematic. But in the UK, it is definitely taking off. I think over the past couple of weeks, we've seen reports come out of Bloomberg and out of Goldman's have reported drops in utility scale solar,
yeah,
but
yeah.
small scale solar, which includes behind the meter, is 30% up year on year. And that's really exciting because that is commercial. It's not subsidy driven. It's driven by businesses wanting to get the energy savings and get that resilience into their power portfolios.
How are they funding it, Rob? Because this is the other issue is that people don't want it on the books. Like I said right at the beginning, some people are going off the longer term power purchase agreements, PPAs as they're called. So are people going, actually, you know what, I'll take the capital cost of putting in that solar? Are you having to come up with a funding mechanism? What are you seeing?
We're still seeing enormous interest in PPAs, power purchase agreements,
Right.
and that is still the method of choice. I think to procure solar, it locks in long-term savings, gives you predictability, reliability. But I think the key is that businesses need to find the right partner. They need to get confidence that the supplier is going to be in it for the long term
Yeah.
and is going to own and operate this installation for the lifetime of the PPA. That's super important. I think that's where the nervousness comes in because we
Mm.
have seen across Europe, BESS and solar providers, the suppliers in particular, getting into some financial difficulties, one or two
Yeah.
bankruptcies. So do the work up front to make sure that your supplier will stay with that project.
I don't want to name any companies, but in terms of what your client base is it kind of like a small warehouse or up to a big sort of distribution? Who are the sort of people that are investing in it? It'd be nice to know what kind of types of businesses, but don't name any names.
Yeah, I mean, no, excuse me, no surprise in that it's energy intensive. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of manufacturing
Yeah.
businesses, particularly automotive, food and bev, um,
Oh,
would be big adopters, and still the water industry as well,
Of
particularly
course.
in the
Yeah.
UK. And in the UK, water was an early adopter of solar, but is an example of having gone through these waves and cycles, is now coming back and looking at it again, driven by the need to get more resilience, as penalties get worse and worse from the regulator
Yeah.
for things that can be impacted by supply, particularly on the wastewater side, but also to lock in those cost savings long term.
Before we go, where do you see this kind of um, solar positioning? As you say, it's growing. You've seen, I suppose, like we talked about, the industry's trying to get to grips with some of the things that have been considered negative. The bio stuff, the kind of the labor that's been used to build these things, all of that. But reliability will improve, efficiency will improve. Do you see it becoming, I don't know, 25 years from now, the same as gas was to coal, 50 years ago? I mean, you see it like a big player? Because most people in this country would probably see wind as the principal, renewable source. Um, how do you predict it?
Yeah, I mean, to date in the UK, wind has been the lead renewable, hasn't it?
Yeah,
And we've
by a long way. Yeah,
by a long way, and we produce more than we can use, famously, around Scotland, don't we, in particular? Um, and solar has lacked, and it's the government's ambition for solar is a bit of a concern. So the
mm,
government is aiming for 10 to 15% of the UK's energy needs to be met by solar over 10 years. And by comparison, Germany is aiming for 4 times that in
yeah,
half the time.
yeah,
Um, but most predictions and forecasts have solar as the dominant energy source in the future, over the course of the next 10 or 15 years, largely because it is so predictable, it is so reliable, it is the cheapest, and it doesn't rely at all on centralized grids.
yeah. I
So
suppose
I'd
that's the
be
real advantage. Yeah.
that is a real advantage. So I'd be really disappointed actually if in the UK we were at 10 to 15%. But I also don't think we need government necessarily to get beyond that.
So
It'll
do
be
you
the
think
commercial
businesses,
clients.
yeah, will they take it in their own hands? Because that is the thing, you can't, not everyone can have a turbine, but a lot of people can have some solar panels on the roof, can't they?
Yeah, exactly. And as I said earlier, the amount of energy intensive businesses needs that can be serviced through solar is increasing all the time, particularly through BESS. And particularly as we find that landowners are much more willing to do business with us as well, so that we can oversize
Yeah,
the installations. I see this as really taking off. So I'd be really disappointed if we were only at 15% in the UK. I think most places around the world will get beyond that. But I believe that it's the underlying commercial solar industry that will take us beyond that,
yeah,
and not the headline grabbing government backed projects that Farage wants to kill off.
yeah. A little bit of politics there. Let's get it in. Um, one last thing before I've always wondered why the hell, this is just a bullshit question, but I've always asked it. Why don't we just make roof tiles out of solar panels? So that'd be a lot easier than sticking these bloody things up. Are we ever going to get there, Rob?
Do you know what? From a technical point of view, I'm not well informed enough to
Right.
answer. From
A
a
lot easier, wouldn't it?
design
It'd be nice to
point
have
of
a blue
view,
roof.
well, I mean, you do see them set within the
Yeah,
roofs,
yeah.
and particularly on the new houses now that look much more attractive. So I'm going to say yes, yes, Summit. We will see that, yeah, for sure. We'll be installing
Excellent.
them ourselves.
Excellent. I can put a message to my neighbours. That'd be awful. Yes, that's good. Listen, Rob, really appreciate your time. Thank you because you've really, opened up my mind about where solar can go and where it's going. Best of luck with what you're doing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Ladies and gents, audience, tell us what you think about solar, where you think it's going in terms of will your business be using it? You can get in touch on social media. You can let us know. Make sure you can get involved by going to our websites, energylivenews.com and futurenetzero.com. And remember, if you want to be on the show, then get in touch. It's nethero@futurenetzero.com. My thanks to Rob for production, and we'll catch you next time.
You've just heard the Net Hero podcast from futurenetzero.com. Join us as we help you find ways to cut your carbon footprint as we head towards net zero. Subscribe and follow us on social media. futurenetzero.com. Better business, better planet.